Well, welcome back to the KDLT Sports Bunker and the Sports Video Blog. This is Mark Ovenden of Calling All Sports and our sports director here at KDLT. I'm Zach Borg, the weekend anchor. A lot of stuff to cover. We've been gone for about 2 weeks now, but everything's kind of starting to really pick up steam again as we get near some state tournaments, state cross country coming up on Saturday, state cheer and dance as well, and then the state football playoffs a little over a week away. Start off talking a little college football. Big week for a couple of teams locally. South Dakota State, this is kind of the stretch of their year that's probably going to determine whether they're a postseason team A and maybe how high up on the chain they are. And they get a huge win at Northern Iowa, a game that was kind of similar to last year's game when they won in double overtime. That vaulted them into the playoffs a year ago. Scored 21 unanswered in the second half. Fluky circumstance ties the game. They end up winning it with a field goal and interception late. Kind of like last year, you get the feeling that might be the win that kind of propels them toward the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, that was a game either team had to win. Both those teams nationally ranked at the time, and the one that lost that game, their chances of making the playoffs probably almost over unless you run the table, which is really hard to do in the Missouri Valley. I mean, look at how many teams are ranked in the top 25. Look at how many teams are good. I mean, it's not just the ranked teams that you got to worry about. It's most every team in the conference can win on a given week. And, you know, we've said that over and over the years. Yeah, and this was a perfect example of it. You kind of feel a little sorry for UNI. They've lost so many tough games the last 2 years, but this was a big win for John Stiglmeier's team, and
the first one in Northern, first one actually in Cedar Falls since 1978. They hadn't won at Northern Iowa since they'd went Division I.
Well, they haven't played consistently over that whole period of time, right. But it's a tough place to win, so that was a good victory for them.
This is the stretch that kind of defines their season, like we said. Especially after they played so poorly on the road at Illinois State, where they got beat 45-10. Illinois State, though, is unbeaten and tied with NDSU right now, so that's not a bad team. That certainly looks like a very good contender. But
no, but they got beat badly, though.
To be beat like that,
45-10 or whatever it was.
3 turnovers in the first quarter, and you're down 21-0, and it's over. But you get UNI out of the way. Youngstown State game you can see right here on KDLT. That's our game of the week at 2 o'clock. Then to North Dakota State. And then you go to Indiana State, who's been better this year, although they're kind of starting to fall back a little bit. You win 3 out of 4 in this stretch. You're in the playoffs, at least, assuming you also win your final 2 home games against Western Illinois and USD. You win all 4 of them, and you're in the hunt for a conference title.
You're looking too far ahead. I mean, seriously, I hate to sound like a coach, but I can guarantee you the guys at South Dakota State aren't going, well, we could win 3 out of 4 of these games after this. They're not thinking past this weekend, and they can't. Look what almost happened last Saturday down at UNI, and that wasn't a game that they...
Or even Missouri State the week before when they got down by 18.
They were fortunate to come back and win that game. I mean, when you're down 28-10, you got to have things go your way all of a sudden. I'm not going to say they got lucky. I did say they were fortunate. There's a difference between the two. Things started to go their way, and they came back and made a nice comeback and pulled out. That was also a game they had to win. They could not afford to start the conference schedule 0-2. And I mean, they're 2-1. They could be 0-3. So you don't want to look past anything. Let's just hope the KDLT hex for our local schools doesn't continue, because USD's lost the last 2 weeks with their games on our station.
That's a good point. I also kind of wonder how far along Austin Sumner is. I mean, this is actually about 6 weeks since he had the toe injury at Missouri. Question for Stig maybe later this week as we get on is what's going to happen if Austin's available to go here in the next couple of weeks. But not to look again ahead, but we also shift down to Division II.
Stop it.
Well, we go to Division II right now. This is a big stretch also for Sioux Falls. They're 7-0 right now. It's been a great season for them. These next 2 road games, though, are at Winona State, who's 4-3, but still a very talented team. We saw them earlier this year just to dismantle Northern. And then you go to number 1 Mankato the following week. A couple of years ago, they went 9-2, but didn't make the playoffs. Do they have to win one of these next 2 games to get to the playoffs at this point?
I think if they win one of the 2, they probably will get in. But again, there's more of the schedule left after that. I would think 9-2 would get in. Especially based on the fact that they've had such a solid year. They're ranked. They keep jumping up. They're 14th this week. I would think 9-2 would get them in, but they're 7-0, and all they're worried about is this week.
Every game.
And
game.
yeah, I mean, you just can't do that. As sportscasters, we can do that, but as coaches, they absolutely cannot do that. If you got an easy schedule, that's one thing, but they don't.
As for some of the other teams in our area, it's kind of an interesting stat I brought up to you. There's 3 number 1 ranked college football teams playing in South Dakota. Now, one of them really doesn't count. It's Morningside at Briarcliff. Forget about that. That's at the Dakota Dome. You've got
you're taking credit for it because it's in South Dakota.
Well, it is.
It's 2 Iowa schools.
But it's in South Dakota. We have 3 of the number 1 ranked teams in the 5 classes of college football that will be in this state. So,
do you have anything else to talk about that we really don't care about?
Well, 2 of the games we do care about. Okay,
absolutely.
that's why I'm getting to you gotta let me make my point here.
What is your point?
We've got Mankato at Augie. NDSU is at USD. What do we see from these games? I think Augie could have a shot to give him a pretty good game. I'm not so sure about USD.
I'm not quite sure where USD's at right now because they played UNI tough. Maybe could have won that game. Last week at Missouri State, they couldn't have won that game. They did not play very well, and I think Joe Glenn's a little frustrated with his team. But we'll see. Kevin Earls, they were so happy to have him back, and I think they thought that would.
They got a quick lift from it against UNI the week before.
Right, but it hasn't. They just didn't play very well at Missouri State, and they're not a bad team either. So again,
Missouri Valley.
They're going through a brutal part of their schedule. USD is right now,
and they also lost Trevor Bauma for the season. They've had injuries. That's been the story for their running backs the last 2 years. But now you lose him. It just kind of keeps piling on, unfortunately. Augie's had a nice season. Trey Hyde threw 6 touchdowns out in Wayne State. Actually tied a Division II record with 5 1/4.
And they blew a 28-point lead and fell behind with just over a minute to go and rallied to win. It was a great touchdown at the end for them to win it on his 6th touchdown pass.
Tied
but
the school record.
Anytime you give up 48 points, I'm sure Coach O is not real happy with that because they've been a good defensive team. That was what was odd about that game. It just turned into this shootout, which you never would have expected. But, if they're going to have to play a much better game defensively this week to have a chance to beat Mankato State.
Cross country also this week. We've talked a lot about the Lincoln team for AA. It looks like the boys are going to probably run away with that title, we think. And, of course, you also have Macy Hines, who's a track standout in Class B. She's also one of the best runners in cross country, not surprising.
Yeah, she's just had a phenomenal career. In fact, I'm not even sure what year she is in school. She's been dominating for so long. And Emily Hawks of Madison in Class A has also had, I think every time we've had a scoreboard of a cross-country meet that Madison's been in, she's won. So, there's going to be some individual athletes and some teams to watch for at the state cross-country. That's in Huron on Saturday, and the cheer and dance is in Watertown. Washington has won the dance portion of that for the last 6 years, but Brandon Valley was right on their heels last year. It was really close last year. I think it was less than a point.
Yeah.
So I think the Lynx feel like maybe this is their year. And in the cheer section of it, I think there's like 3 different teams that really, any one of the 3 could win that.
It's also the final week of the football regular season. Most of all the Sioux Falls schools are done. They finished up last week. It's Football Friday on a Thursday. Season concludes on a Thursday. They give everybody a little extra time to rest up, and the playoffs actually start the following Tuesday. Headline for you, anything that you're really kind of looking forward to as we get ready to head into the playoffs, or a team that's kind of maybe surprised you a little bit?
I'm excited about our feature game this week. It's Woonsocket, Wessington Springs, Sanborn Central at Woolsey, Wessington. Both those teams are undefeated.
That's a lot of names.
We've shot that game before, and it's been meaningful. I'm not sure it's been quite as meaningful as this one to end the season with both teams 7-0, both teams ranked. Max Jensen will be in Woolsey for that game. That'll be a lot of fun. Brandon Valley at Harrisburg.
Harrisburg's kind of been struggling.
They've lost 3 straight games. They've played 3 really good teams, though, so you can't you can't say they're playing poorly. They've been playing really tough competition. It doesn't get any easier this week because Brandon Valley can put a lot of points up on the board. Canastota will try to rebound from their tough loss at home to Howard. Boy, did Luke Loudenberg look good last Friday night. But they play at Garrettson, and the Blue Dragons are pretty good too. They were ranked 4th last week in the 9AA poll with only 1 loss. So, those are a couple of games to watch for. I like the game in Woolsey. I'm kind of fired up about that one.
There's a lot of really good races in some of these classes. I think 11AA with Yankton and Brookings and maybe even Harrisburg. Some of the 9-man classes look good. And even at AAA, Lincoln has not looked unbeatable. They've had some moments where they've been played tough. So there's really no one team that really stands out, I think, at any level right now that you can say, okay, they're the clear-cut favorite.
I disagree. Howard stands out.
That's a good point.
Howard is going to be hard for anybody to beat. I would agree with you in the rest of the classes, but right now the Howard Tigers, they beat Canastota at Canastota 52-12 last Friday night. Luke Loudenberg's had a ridiculous. Well, sure, every game's close for a while.
But this was like they put like 40 in the second half.
Yeah, but they put 40 in the second. They won by 40 points. So that's a pretty convincing win. I just don't see anybody beating them. Any other class, 11A is going to be fun. There's several teams that could win that. 11AA, Yankton's kind of been on this. They've just sort of had this Cinderella season. I don't want to say Cinderella season because that means they were the underdog. They've got a good team, but they've had a lot of things happen, and they've come out on top in all of them. They've won a couple overtime games. They won that game that started in Yankton and finished their homecoming in Aberdeen. And
2 weeks later.
Yeah, it's been. I think magical might be the right word. I'd say they're the team to beat, but Brookings is really good too in that class. And 11 AAA, I agree with you. Parks, that division's I think always the toughest one to pick. You got your top 5 teams, rated top 5 teams in 11B are all undefeated.
Final thing, we last week when we did our last blog, we were getting ready to have the first hockey game in the Premier Center. We've seen it now 4 times. You and I have both been there shooting it, and as a fan, they had, of course, nearly 11,000 in the opener. I actually outdrew an NHL team or two, and it kind of felt like an NHL atmosphere the first time. Thoughts on the new building and on the team? The Stampede have kind of struggled to score at times this year. Hopefully they kind of got on track a little bit with the 4 goals against Fargo. But I like the new building, and even when they curtain it off, it still seems like a pretty good atmosphere when you get 3,000 or 4,000 people in there. I didn't know that it was going to be that way before we got there. And as for the team, it's just so early in the season right now. But I do like.
They were going to curtain it off?
Well, I didn't know if the atmosphere was going to be the same. I mean, how was it going to feel like it was a small amount of people in a very big building, which I think it still does have a bit of an intimate feel. I just didn't have a lot of reason to cheer the night I was there as a fan when they got beat 4-1. I do like the fact, though, Art Bry seems to be playing pretty good. That's a good thing to have as you got a young team that's still kind of finding itself.
Well, you need a good goalie, and they've got 2 good goalies, actually. I thought Lekas played really well the night you went as a fan, and I was shooting. He made a couple of great saves, and they had 47 shots on goal that night and only scored 1 goal. Granted, if you're a hockey person, you understand that shots on goal could be very misleading.
Right.
Doesn't mean they had 47 chances to score. It means they potentially might have only had 10, 12 good shots on net for potential scoring opportunities, and that's kind of what happened that night. But they needed a game where they scored more than a goal, because they won the game Friday night with 1 goal, and then finally, like you said, scored 3 goals in the second period on Saturday night to beat Fargo 4-1. And they're 3-4-1. They're young. They're going to get better. I don't think anybody in the organization is concerned about their start. If they're not concerned about it, I'm not going to get concerned about it. The building's phenomenal. If you haven't been to the Denny yet, you need to go, because it's pretty cool. I talked to a lot of scouts the one night I was there shooting, and they were in awe. And these are scouts for NHL teams that just said this place is unbelievable. It literally is. It's almost like going to an NHL arena. So we should be very proud, feel very lucky to have the building, and I hope the team starts playing better. They're starting. Let's hope it continues. They're on the road for a couple of games this week.
Plenty more coming up, though, as we get near the end of the football regular season for high school. Again, Football Friday on a Thursday, and I think we'll have it on a Tuesday, and then another Thursday, and then a few. It's all mixed up.
There's a lot of nights left of watching us do football highlights.
That's not a bad thing. For Mark Ovenden, I'm Zach Borg. Again, don't forget Football Friday on a Thursday and KDLT College Football Game of the Week Saturday. Hobo Day. I don't know. Stick's got the beard going pretty good now. That's kind of his tradition now.
Yep, it is. And if they win, then maybe he'll keep it. We'll see.
You gonna go with the beard?
I'm not. I'm a Richmond Spider, so that's not our tradition.
Well, that'll do it for this edition of the KDLT Sports Blog. For two clean-shaven men, I'm Zach Borg. We'll see you later.